Hi, folks. It's your pal Mike Shea from slyflourish.com and twitter.com/slyflourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy DM Prep. I was muted. Sorry for that. This is a weekly show in which I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master to prepare for my weekly D&D game. In this case, I am talking about Session 0 of Secret of Saltmarsh. No, Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Is it Ghost or Ghosts? Ghosts, I think. Let's fix this here. Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Look at that. We're editing in real time. If you are a fan of the Sly Flourish Empire, this show is brought to you by the fine folks at Patreon, the fine backers of Sly Flourish on Patreon at patreon.com/slyflourish. If you are a supporter of the show, thank you very much. What else is it brought to you by? I guess that's it. All the fans out there, thank you all. If you are in Twitch right now, we can chat. Feel free to say hello and chat. Jenny Lesko, thank you for letting me know that I was muted. That's embarrassing. Usually something goes wrong. Usually it goes on wrong right in the beginning of the show, and then everything's smooth after that. So so we're here to talk about Saltmarsh. In fact, today, this episode, this show, we're going to focus on running a Session 0 for Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which I think is very important. I think it's an important topic. I think it's something that folks will be interested to hear about. So I think that it's going to be a good. Well, I can hope it's a good show. I hope it's a good show today. So last week I was going to run a Session 0 for Saltmarsh for my Sunday group, but my Sunday group, 3 of the 6 people were out, so we canceled the game instead. And I had just previously run a Session 0 for my Wednesday group. So I've actually got one Session 0 behind me of this, which is great because that means the group today is going to have a smoother operation. But I did ask my wife on our walk today whether or not if there was anything that I should have added to the Session 0. And she couldn't think of anything. So that's pretty good. She'd give me a straight answer. He's Not Your Problem is here. Wayne Owen is here. Von Corralin is here. Native DM is here. Thank you all for coming today. So last week instead, I talked about, because my game was canceled, I had a whole day. My game was canceled and all my other obligations were sort of taken care of. So I had a whole day, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to try an entire day prepping for D&D? So if I had the whole day free, what would I do? And I wrote out a list, and I went through it. So it was actually pretty interesting. I thought I would talk about that a little bit today. I've got some notes. I'll bring them up here on my Sublime edit on topics for the show. So results from spending a whole day prepping D&D. So the idea here was, when we look at Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, it is designed to help you prepare for your game in about a half hour, maybe an hour for some people, maybe 15 minutes for others, but in that range, a shorter amount of time, because we don't have a lot of time in our lives, and the amount of prep that we do can limit us in our ability to actually run games. If we feel that it takes 2 to 4 hours to prep for a 2 to 4 hour game, a lot of us don't have that kind of time. So Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is built first on the premise that we can focus our time on the things that are most important, and I think the book accomplishes that. The other thing is that sometimes when we prep less, we actually have a better game. That's the other core concept of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. A little bit debatable, and there's not a perfect equation for it. Hey, my mom is here. Hello, Mom. So if we take that idea and we expanded on it and said, well, what if you had a lot of time? What if you had an entire day? What would you do with an entire day preparing for D&D? This is something I've thought a lot about. I ran a little, not a survey, but I asked on Twitter and got lots of responses and spent a lot of time studying the responses. And we talked about that last week. So last weekend on Sunday, I spent the day preparing for my Ghosts of Saltmarsh game. And it was pretty interesting. And I had some feedback that I thought I'd share. One is, a day isn't as long as you think. I really did spend the whole day on it. I think I took like a couple breaks. I said I would go from basically, from this show, which was at 10 o'clock, until about 5. I ended up I went even longer than that. I spent till like 7 or 8 o'clock, but I took a couple breaks. I took one break to work on a table that I add some power adapters to a table that I've got upstairs. And I also took a break to play some Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But aside from that, and like walks and lunch and stuff like that, I really spent the whole day with just Ghosts of Saltmarsh in front of me, and with all of the various things that I was doing with Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And it was really fun. Like, it wasn't hard. It wasn't like I was driven to go, oh, I got to go do other things. So, but it went fast, the day slipped by quick. And there were parts where I was like, I don't know that I'm really like making a lot of progress here. It wasn't like the game is better. So the two kind of big pieces was that a day didn't feel as long as I thought it would. I thought like a day would be like, oh man, I have so much time. There's so many things I can do. And it went quickly, even though I was spending time planning the game. The other one is there was definitely diminishing returns, that at the end of the day and even, a couple days after where I thought about what I had done, I really felt like the lazy DM checklist helped me more than anything else. So there was definitely like some diminishing returns on what value I got for the day. But there was one thing that definitely made a difference: the value of time constraints. Yeah, there's some science to that, right? That the more limited our time is, the better. I don't know. The more you get done. I don't know if it's necessarily better, at least from what I read. But yeah, there's definitely. But a day is still a constraint, and I still felt constrained by having just a day. Because the time isn't unlimited. And the reality is, like, I spent the day and then I spent time doing other things. I spent other times working on Salt Marsh stuff. But one of the big things I did, and I talked about this last week, is I took the maps from Ghosts of Saltmarsh. If you happen to have Ghosts of Saltmarsh on D&D Beyond, this is very interesting. I was a little nervous about talking about this last week because I wasn't sure that we were theoretically allowed to print the maps that you get in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I wasn't sure if it's like, well, no, it's intended that you're using online. These are not intended for you to print, even though they're really high resolution. And so I was nervous about that. And I actually sent a message to Dyson asking him about it on Twitter, because I was like, is this okay? Like, I don't want to publish this if you're worried about it. And so, and then while I was publishing that, I looked, and on the front page of the D&D Beyond site is The Best Maps of 5th Edition by James Hake. This is on the D&D Beyond website. And there's an article here that talks about printability, that in D&D Beyond they have high resolution versions of these maps, and you can print them from the site at high resolution. I was like, okay, well, so if their lead writer is on the D&D Beyond website recommending it, I'm pretty sure it's okay. So I'm no longer worried about printing them. And Dyson also wasn't worried. Yeah, so he's not your problem set. I saw James Hake talk about it. Right. So no longer worried about that. So now I can talk about it all I want. I was a little nervous about it because I was like, I don't know if we were theoretically allowed to do that. But man, they're beautiful. So one thing I did is, if we look at the maps, we'll go to the Secret of Saltmarsh Map. Because Dyson did them. Dyson has a particular style, which is black and white line art. This is how he does his maps. And I got to say, like, originally, I was not a super big fan. I gotta find the right way to zoom. Wasn't a super big fan because I felt like going from a Mike Schley map to this is very different. Like, the color is really nice and everything, but boy, the reproducibility makes a huge difference when it comes to practicality in our game. And I think I'm sworn over that, like, and I'll when I talk about the staple side, there's definitely advantage there. So this is as you can see, it's a very high resolution map. Like, look at you can get right into the details on this. And I think it's 4,000 pixels across, something like that. And anyway, because it is black and white, you can send it to Staples as a blueprint, architectural and engineering prints. And they have different sizes, 18 by 24, 24 by 36, and 36 by 48. And they are dirt cheap. They're like $2. I think it's like $2 for an 18 by 24. Yeah, look at this. $1.79 for 18 by 24. 24 by 36 is $3.59, and 36 by 40 is $7.29. Those are huge maps. So I was like, wow, at $1.79, I'll print them all. And I did. I spent about an hour getting all of the maps out of D&D Beyond. I just saved them all to a directory and then went through the print on demand process at Staples and got them printed out. And I tried to aim them for the 1 inch per square grid. And it cost about $50 in the end. And it's like $50 for like, is it like 15 maps or something? 14 maps. So they are really, it was pretty cheap per map. But I did learn one lesson that I would like to share that's important. So yeah, the first answer is it works great. And printing blueprint printings, when you have a black and white piece of art like this at Staples, you can also do it at FedEx. I sent a couple to FedEx and printed it there as well. I think FedEx was a little bit higher in price, but not by much. So if you have a FedEx, that's closer. But you got to look specifically for their blueprint and engineering prints, not their color print, because the color print is like $50 for a poster. but it's much cheaper to get a poster that way. But one thing that I really wish I had done, I printed out, I tried to print them all out as close to a 1-inch square as I could. And Brohannes Brahms here brings up the biggest map constraint is table space. It used to be money. It used to be that the maps were too pricey. But one thing I did is if we look at one of the other I'm messing everything up. I'm going back to the sources and adventures and goes to Salt Marsh. Let's go to Danger at Dunwater has a huge map. And I'm not sure. I think this is a good example of the problem that I ran into, which does come down to look at the size of that thing, right? That is an enormous map, and we're gonna bring up the player version of that. I can't even get it small enough to fit on the screen, right? Huge map, like look at those, right? And I was like, ooh, imagine printing that out on 36 by 48. So I did. I printed this out on 36 by 48, and it's pretty close to a 1-inch square, except for one problem. In this one, the scale, the 1-inch square is, where's the scale here? How come I can't find the scale? A 1-inch square is 10 feet, not 5 feet, which means it's not intended for battle map play. This is like your explorer's play, which means you don't need a 1-inch square because you're not going to put a miniature in anyway. You might, and I might try this in because I've got it now. I've got this giant, I've got about 4 36 by 48 inch maps of, it's this one and the ones for the last enemy or the final enemy. I printed them out huge. So I'm going to use them because I got a big dining room table. I can fit in them. I have a 36 by 48 acrylic sheet on my dining room table, so I can slide them under that. And we can kind of use that. But yeah, I mean, people are going to have their crap all over it all the time. And, the edges are going to stick out. It's going to be a mess. And having received them, I'm like, man, I wish I'd gotten smaller. But I'll tell you that any of the maps that have a 10-foot scale, I wish I had just stuck to 18 by 24. An 18 by 24 inch map is it's a big map that everybody can see, but it's also easy to manipulate. It's easy to put out on a table. You can easily slide it under an acrylic sheet. It's real nice. And they're cheaper. They're like $1.79. So I wish that I had printed out only the ones that have a 5-foot square. And I think this one, for example, I think 1 square, does it say on here? Yeah, 1 square equals 5 feet. This is on the mansion itself. So this one I did use, and this was a 24 by 36, and I stuck this under my map, and we used this while they were exploring. And that worked out pretty well. So the ones where you have a 5-foot square that you can print on 24 by 36, those maps are good. The bigger 36 by 48s are really too big, and the ones that have a 10-foot per square measurement, you don't need to have them at 1-inch square anyway, and 18 by 24 works best. So I would almost say print them all out in 18 by 24, and don't bother really using them as battle maps because it's just easier to handle, and it's also way cheaper. Like $2 a piece. That means you can get 12 maps for like $24. So it's definitely a good price. So that worked really well. That was something I did on the day of prep, and it worked really well, and I recommend it. I will do it again. As long as Dyson is continuing to make maps for D&D, I will continue, and I'm playing them, I will continue to print them out as a blueprint printing, and I like that a lot. The other big thing that I thought was a high-value activity on the day was simply spending a lot of time reading the adventure. And I focused my reading on 2 areas, the appendices, and because I hadn't really read those before, and on the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh first adventure. And this gets into my number one piece of DM advice, which is really worry about your next game. Don't spend a lot of time thinking about the whole campaign. Think about what's going to happen in your next session, right? That's something I've been promoting for over a decade now. And it's the case in this too, that I know, I can go and I can read the other adventures. And I did. I read many of the other adventures where I wasn't clear, what was the thing on the island again? And I went back and read the thing on the island. Or what's up with the boat? The sunken ship and the weird pirate. Oh yeah. And I would read that again. So there were many of them where I went back and read adventures that I didn't really remember to kind of get myself in line. But really I spent my time reading Ghosts of Saltmarsh itself, Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, the first chapter, the first adventure in that book, and really going through room by room and understanding what's there and what's going on. And also in reading the appendices. And I didn't realize this, but the appendices, so I kind of thought that the appendices had it's got new monsters. I knew it had that. And I knew that it had, let's jump to the appendices. And I knew it had stuff about ships and ship statistics and all that, but I'm like, well, we're not getting a ship right away, so I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm also not real mechanic heavy, so I don't really need a lot of stuff about the mechanics of ships. I'm just going to wing it anyway. So they had a bunch of ships, but the one thing that it had that I didn't really realize is there is essentially 3 other adventures back here. It's got, and they're kind of buried. I kind of wish they had their own appendix because I think I missed them because of this. There's all this stuff about ships, and there's Dyson ship maps. You can print those Dyson maps too if you want to have some ship maps to use. I'll think about fire. There's a lot of stuff, like all the crunchiness of it. Ocean environment. So these are kind of cool. These are like fantastic locations under the sea. And the ocean environs, the blue holes, which are these weird, deep blue holes of water that have, different kinds of things going on. Coral reefs and currents and the stuff going on there. And then there's more, mists, eldritch mists, there's a lot of fantastic stuff. Shadowfell fog, wild magic fog, kelp forest, kraken grave. These are really neat locations, lure lights to kind of, that you can use in your game. What was this one here? Magical storms that are of all the different types of magic. That's crazy. Sandbars. So there's all this stuff, which is great. Shipwrecks, and there's a whole island generator. I remember people talking about how you could kind of build your own islands. Whirlpools, and the whirlpools lead to like the other planes. It's crazy. Then there's random encounters at sea, open water encounters, lots of stuff there. Random ship types, including names, the intrepid mermaid, the red kraken, the salty shark, the drunken saber, kind of cool names, right, that you can generate for ships. And then names for people too. I like these. Different kinds, cargo fishing, blah, 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 more ships. You can see there's a lot of stuff, and this is a giant appendices. The mysterious islands, right? So this is your island generator. Alien, cursed, hostile, sanctum, welcoming, wild. All different kinds of stuff that can go on this island. It's almost like a mini dungeon generator right on it. Look, Demi-Lich. Don't roll a 6 on your cursed island because you got a Demi-Lich and a bunch of wraiths. That's bad. Don't want to run to a Demi-Lich at level 3. Trolls, Rakshasa sanctums. So there's all this, which is great. I love these random generators for doing stuff. I actually talked a lot about this on Twitter last week, and I wrote a whole article about using random generators to help kind of fill in worlds. But then here's the other one, these underwater locations. And there's 3 of them. There's a cove, right? And it's got a full, map, right? Nice big map. And these are the ones I printed out at Kinko's to see, because I didn't print them at Starbucks. I didn't print them at Staples. I wish Starbucks did printing. I'd save so much time. So I printed these out and I printed them out 24 by 36. And I wish I had done 18 by 24 because they're 1 square equals 10 feet. They didn't need to be as big as they were. I wasn't thinking. But they have locations. So you have a nice big map with a bunch of locations, and then you have a bunch of stuff that's in these locations. No read aloud text, but that's not really a problem. And then there's a bunch of like adventures that could take place in here. And there's, all these different sort of things that could be happening at these locations. And you can kind of use this to sort of piece together your own adventures. Here's a big wreck, right? A shipwreck that's on the bottom of the sea, and it's got all sorts of stuff going on there. So there's 3 of these. And they all have a location and potential adventure seeds for the location. So they're different than a full adventure, but they're pretty easy for a DM to use to kind of build a place. And a lot has to do with this map, a nice, beautiful map, and then general descriptions. This reminds me very much of the stuff that is in the end of the Lazy DM workbook. If we go to the workbook here, let me switch over. In the workbook, I wanted DMs to be able to have a bunch of places on hand. So anytime they needed a lair, I call them lazy lairs, right? And it was anytime you needed a place that, and I picked the most common places I could. Castles, docks, sewers, catacombs, caves, cellars, dungeon, mines, temple, and wizard's tower. Each of them has a map. And each of them has descriptions, including some read aloud text of what's there. It doesn't describe any monsters or anything else that's going there. The idea is you would probably fill it with your own monsters. The map of a dock, sewers, big sewer map, catacombs. So I did a similar thing. And I think it's really valuable. And I think the idea of putting this in the back of a book that is based on putting them in the back of a book that sort of has a theme to it. So you have these like 3 underwater encounters or 3 sort of seaside encounters, I think is a really powerful tool. So I spent time reading that, and I thought that was really great. And I think it's worth, digging into that. So reading the adventure, reading the side leg. So then I thought we'd take a quick look at, like, here was the checklist of things that I said I would do during the day, and then what I actually did. And I actually, I prepared the maps. I read the adventure. I read the appendices. I can't type. I'm typing too fast. So I did this for my Wednesday group. Because my Wednesday group had already gone through a session 0, I went through all of the characters and then also the adventures and tried to tie character bits to the adventures. And you'll see me do that next week with the characters that come up today. But that was really useful. Handouts, I think I made one handout that wasn't in the Ghost of Saltmarsh Beetle and Grimm box, but I have the Beetle and Grimm box, so I already have handouts handled. But that is something I think would be definitely worth the time if one had extra time. I did go through all my miniatures and pull out a big box of minis. I got to remember to bring that today. Oh no, we're not actually running the game. But I have a Plano tackle box with all the minis brought out in groups. So then I don't have little baggies or anything. I just have this Plano box, and it's got all the minis for all of the encounters in Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. That took a while. It took like 45 minutes for me to get them all. I had to go into my archive and dig out old badgers and stuff. Weasels. Matthew B says, there's one shipwreck in there that annoys me. It's got a 25-foot tall statue that listed 1,500 pounds is ridiculously low. Like, even accounting for an effective weight, it should be like 10 times that. Yeah. I suppose you could just add a 0, right? Sometimes things like that get caught in editing. It's made out of, it's hollow. It's all hollow. I pondered the NPCs and their actions. Mainly there's one, which we'll talk about today. A campaign soundtrack was something I was going to do. I ended up just saying, you know what? I think the Assassin's Creed Black Flag soundtrack is good on its own. So I was like, that was done in 5 minutes. And I just listened to the Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And I never actually made a prop lantern. So I did not do that. I would say an effective day. I don't think, I joked with my players who kind of knew that I was doing that, and they're like, wow, this game better be really good. And I was like, it's probably going to be about like any other game. So I don't know that it was like a major impact. And that's why I think like there's definitely a diminishing return with the amount of time I had. Reading the adventure was useful. Getting the maps ready for the whole campaign will be useful for the whole long length of the campaign. Tying all that stuff together really worked. Yeah, Grant actually does live he does live in Virginia. And he says, you need an extra player, right? I don't need one today, but I might later. I'll keep you in mind. Shh. I would love to play with Grant. Grant's awesome. Grant was my DM for some Kobold Press games, and Grant gave me clues for a game I ran yesterday. It was fine. The game went fine. Not a fan of that adventure. We'll talk about that, Grant. But thank you for the help. Yeah, so that was that. So it's 24 minutes in, and all I did so far was talk about what I did on the day where I prepped D&D. But that's kind of I think it was a useful exercise. I'm going to write an article about it too. I thought it was a useful exercise. Do you feel like the prep you did specific to the adventure, beyond maps, will cut down on prep? Reading the adventure definitely will cut down on prep. Getting the maps ready, assuming I would have gotten the maps ready later, also will cut down on prep. So that, I think, was useful. I think setting up the backgrounds of the characters to hooks in the adventures, that's going to pay dividends later. So having a day to prepare for a campaign was really useful. And I recommend, if one has the opportunity, I think that's really useful. Session 0. So for anybody who's not familiar with the concept of a session 0, the idea is that when you're starting a new campaign, even if it's a small campaign, rather than jumping right into the adventure on your first session, instead you take a step back, you bring all the players to the table, and you all have a conversation about it. And the conversation does two things. It helps the players understand what's going on in the world and the campaign without getting deeply involved in it yet. And it also is an opportunity for the characters to tweak the players to tweak their characters around the thing. Yeah, Grant, I'm going to get to that one pager in a second. I'm glad you like it. It really helped. It helped me with my both my groups, and that's going to come right up. So it's an opportunity. The reason why you do it, it's also a good opportunity to make sure that everybody's cool with what you're doing. If anybody's got any sensitivities about any of the topics that you're talking about, that's a good time to bring it up so that you can edit those ahead of time. There's a lot of opportunity for just players to sort of soak in the environment. And when they soak it in, then it bleeds into their characters. So then their characters are now much tighter. They're tied much tighter to what's going on. And it works really well. And probably the first biggest recommendation is the thing that Grant mentioned in the chat, which is the Salt Marsh Campaign Player's Guide. I'll drop the link in chat so you guys can load it up, and then we will pull it up here as well. And I believe, yes, I have the right window up. So this is a one-page guide. It is specifically one page. I don't know if I can I get it to scroll so it's just perfectly on the page? That's good. Okay. So it is a one-page guide that I wrote. I stole a lot of text from the adventure itself, but I edited it way down. And the goal here is to write a guide of things that the characters will know and things that will help guide who they are. So it's written in the second person a lot. It's like there's a whole section there in the lower right. Who are you? And it starts, it took a little time to get this right. I edited it because I had a little bit more on the history of the region with the kings and Kyoland and the pirates and all that, and his campaign up north and all that stuff. And I said, that's probably too much. Let's instead cut that down. I got a recommendation from someone on Facebook that said, why don't you cut that down and talk? You don't really talk about the town. So I said, okay. And so that's why I have a nice section of the Salt Marsh. The story begins in Salt Marsh, nondescript fishing village tucked away. Fishing trade has brought it. And it's got here are the inns and Wicker Goat, empty nest, and the snapping line. Notable locations, Dwarven Anvil Forge, Temple of Procan. All that stuff is sort of there. And it's all intended to kind of show the players what is going on in town. The brief history sort of has, so in other campaign building, I talked about the 6 truths. What are the 6 truths of the world? I sort of broke that down. I used to have the 6 truths of Saltmarsh, and instead and I'm not sure if this works better. I'm not, so instead I have 3 paragraphs that just talk about the history of the region of Saltmarsh. And there's also some some truths that are stuck in that initial paragraph, which is meant to be sort of like an in-fiction, really draw, if the players read it, I want them to feel it. I want them to smell the salt in the air and hear the gulls on the beach. I really want them to kind of get this idea and then sort of hint at these other things. Cult to the Forbidden God, monsters gathering beneath the waves, drowned soldiers coming to unnatural life. This, I think I stole from the marketing material of the adventure, figuring that if it's in the marketing material, it's not too much of a spoiler. And then there's the main thing about the factions, that you have traditionalists and loyalists. The funny thing is almost all my players jumped right to the traditionalists and only had 1 or 2 loyalists. So I think I undersold the loyalists and the value of the loyalists. They're not a bunch of tyrannical jerks. They really are trying to make the world a better place. So you want to make sure that those two things are not. It's not like there's a right answer. And then the who are you is really important, and both the first and last sentence are critical. You're a band of adventurers who seek the betterment of the people of Saltmarsh. Whatever else is going on with your character, you want to work with a group. You want to work in a small group to help Saltmarsh. Doesn't matter if you're traditionalist or loyalist. It doesn't matter if you're a druid or a fighter. Your goal is the betterment of the people of Saltmarsh, and that kind of gives a single hook that the players can all gravitate towards. And that way you don't get the I actually hate Saltmarsh and I'm here to take it apart. Well, great. You're not a character, right? That's an NPC now. Then it has a lot of options. It talks about the god Procran, neutral god of weather and the sea, and then it offers backgrounds: fisher, dwarven miner, marine, shipwright, smuggler, veteran. So I threw little background bits in here that can oh yeah, I want to be a veteran. Tell me more about that. Okay, well, there's veteran stuff. But then at the very end to say, above all, you are companions who together seek to bring the safety and prosperity to the village of Saltmarsh. Again, reinforcing that your goal is to group together with other people and help save the city. That way, the motive for all of the rest of the campaign is already preset. You are all doing that. So Matthew B says, I kind of got the same feeling about traditional versus the loyal after just skimming the book, that the loyalists are sort of the bad guy. They're more like the Empire and Star Wars rather than good hardy folk trying to make the world a better place. It's also hard because you're in traditionalist territory, right? Most of the people in Saltmarsh are going to be I don't really want these king people hanging out. Yeah, so it's interesting. Anyway, so I made this. I think it was really valuable to do. It is available. There's the link. It's going to be in my article on slyflourish.com. It's in the show notes here too, so you can go link. And if you're running Saltmarsh, I would recommend using it. If you like it, use it. But that way you don't have to write your own. I should probably stick this up on DM's Guild, shouldn't I? I'm going to do that. today. I'm going to put this up on DM's Guild. The one-page guide to Saltmarsh. I think I'll just give it away too. I think I'll just be free. So if you do, you can't put it anywhere else. Is that right? I can't have it up and available here. I don't know. I'll try. And if they say you can't have it anywhere else, then I'll take it down from DM's Guild. If I put it there, am I screwed? Maybe I won't put it there. Oh, what a hassle, man. Whatever. So I don't think anybody's going to care, but you're probably correct. I would hate to have to take it off my own website. On the other hand, do I care? It's sitting on my Amazon S3 account. That's the only place it is. If it's on DM's Guild, I don't know that I need to put it anywhere else because it's filled with their IP anyway. So yeah, I think I'm going to put it there, and I'll keep it here too. And if somebody tells me to take it down from here, I will. We'll see. I mean, it's free. It's going to be free on DM's Guild too, right? It'll be $0. And I could link to the DM's Guild version. It's just the idea that people have to go log in and get an account and everything and download it sounds like a pain. I don't know that they allow Saltmarsh stuff. Did they not allow Greyhawk? I don't think they allow Greyhawk stuff either. Kingdom of Kyoland and all that. I don't think they'd care. Well, you know what? I don't know. I wish I never brought it up. I think I'll just keep it the way it is. Yeah, I'll just keep it here. We're cool. All is cool here. And there's no trademark stuff in here. And it's anyway, whatever. I'm tired of thinking about it. So, yeah, so I gave this out to my groups ahead of time. So they've had weeks now to think about this. But I also printed 3 copies out that I'm going to bring with me to the game today, just so they're sitting on the table. And anybody who hasn't had a chance to read it, or they read it and they forgot, they'll have it here. And they can kind of use that to build their characters as well. I've got one guy at my group who has been thinking about his Saltmarsh character for like 2 months now, so he's already well built. But we'll see how the other ones. Go. But that, oh man, I screwed up. I moved my window and screwed everything up. Oh, I hate when I do that. Okay. So that was one. That's going to be one big thing. But when we think what else we do in our session 0, I have this fronts and front goals and stuff, but we're not going to, that's actually not for today. It's more campaign planning, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But the main thing that we want to do, so let's take a look at Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master and see what it has to say about session 0s. So chapter 17 is about running session 0s. And so, it kind of hits on all this stuff. We describe the world, talk about, and that's a lot of the stuff that's in this player's guide is from there. Manage the expectations of the game, recognize the fact that this is a seafaring game, it's going to be, level range will be this, just so everybody kind of understands what their characters are generally going to be doing. Their goal is to kind of help Saltmarsh. There's a bunch of threats out there. This is a great opportunity that once the characters are built to kind of decide, like, how do you all know each other? How are you tied together? And there's 2 ways to tie people together. You can either have individual pairings, like one person is a brother or sister of somebody else, or one person idolizes somebody else, or drinking buddies. I offer a whole bunch of potential ways to connect characters in here. But then another one is to kind of tie everybody together. And I think the main way that the Saltmarsh campaign is going to begin is that the characters are called together to solve a mystery. And that's going to be sort of the initial hook of the campaign. And I'm changing the way the campaign is running a little bit, because the main hook, which I'm not going to throw out there in the beginning, this is not a strong start, this is going to happen later in this session, is that a body of a woman comes up on shore. What do they call it? Washes. And she's a prisoner of some sort. So this causes this hook. This is like the initial. This is sort of our initial campaign hook, right? Which is the body of a woman washes up on shore. She appears to have been a prisoner of some sort. Yeah. And the hook. The hook here is that both the loyalists and the traditionalists are using that for their own political benefit. The loyalists are saying, see, you guys can't even keep track of it. The slavers are still out there. This is why you need the Kingsmen here. This is why we have to be here. This is why our ships need to be here. Look, you think piracy is over. It's not. Clearly, this woman was a slave and she's dead. This has to be stopped. And the traditionalists are like, no, like, we don't know who she is or why she's here. And the whole idea is like, she was seen in town a couple of weeks ago. Her and her brother were headed up towards the haunted mansion to go collect the alchemist's gold. This is sort of a secret, right? We can still do our secrets and clues. Nice pirate sort of adventure, right? The woman and her brother came to Salt Marsh with dreams of going to the haunted mansion to get the alchemist's gold. He never is seen from. He's not seen from again. So you have a body that rolls up on shore, and the actual mystery here is, and this is spoilers, Salt Marsh spoilers, so be wary that this is spoilers for Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. The haunted mansion is not haunted. The haunted mansion is filled with bandits and pirates. And the pirates, her and her brother did show up there. They were ambushed by the pirates. He was killed. She was captured. She was thrown on the ship. And then she was tied up, and she managed to escape and leapt off the ship, managed to break her bounds, but still drowned on the way, and then washed up on shore in Salt Marsh. That is the mystery there. But that's sort of the central hook. So, but that's sort of later in the session. So earlier in the session is talk about this. So talk about the characters and how they got together. Reinforce the cooperation. Especially when you have like the traditionalist and loyalist stuff, you got to make sure that there's still good reason to work together. And it's like, hey, whatever the reason, we want to find out why this woman was killed and what happened and where she came from and what happened at the mansion. So now you got a good hook to go there. Introduce NPCs, and there's a bunch of them. We're going to talk more about those today. And introduce the location. And the thing that I liked, so we have the council, and then we have other NPCs. Right, the council is an important construct in Salt Marsh. And then I think then we drop in the campaign hook, right? But this whole time, the players can. This is a session of flexibility. The players can change their characters while the session is going on. This is different than running an adventure, right? You might say like, oh yeah, well you can have people roll history checks and stuff like that to learn stuff. And then what they learn, they're like, oh, actually I am with one of that group, right? So it's very flexible. Oh, you can't see what I'm typing. Oh, thank you. God, I'm terrible. Here's what I've been typing. So session 0, talk about how the characters, how they got together, reinforce the cooperation, introduce the council, introduce other NPCs, introduce the town itself, and drop in the campaign hook. And that's sort of what we want to accomplish in our session 0. But I love session 0s because they're relaxed, right? There's no high energy. You're all just drinking coffee or eating donuts and laughing at each other and talking about each other's characters. And yet you're watching these things. You're watching like planetoids kind of break together and turn into planets. You're watching things kind of become real, and it's really cool. And then by the end of it, it's pretty solid. You got a solid set of characters. You've had interactions with NPCs. You've got a hook, and you're ready to go. And that means the next time you have an adventure, everything is really started off. Just so the secrets you can see. I said that the secrets and clues are a woman and her brother came to Salt Marsh. with dreams of going to a haunted mansion, Alchemist Gold. The man has not been seen again. The woman washes ashore dressed up in prisoner's garb, and she has signs of being bound. Those are, and we already know that the pirates already, the pirates were often slavers, so it's very possible that she was captured and enslaved, but managed to get away. Characters can assign relationships to NPCs. Yeah, right. So that whole when you're introducing the characters, you're also introducing NPCs. I would like to. This is something I want to do right now, which is take a look at the NPCs in Salt Marsh. And we'll start with our politics and factions. So we have there are 5 council members, right? And the council members, I think it works best when they're split across. I think my window's over a little bit in OBS. There we go. Let's get that margin over a little bit. Oh, I can't get this quite right. There we go. Okay. So there are 5 council members, 2 traditionalists, 2 loyalists, and 1 who's kind of waffles back and forth. That makes for a really good, fun, political bit of intrigue. We have Ida Oland, senior member of the council, lived there her whole life. And she's pragmatic. And we mentioned the fact that she is a traditionalist. So we know that up front. We have all these other things about it, but that really works for me. It would be good to have like a... we don't need to put the stars because this is not going to be rendered to Markdown. It would be good to have a character like a character from popular fiction for Ida, but we'll come back to that because we got a lot of them. We have Gellin Primewater. He's an important one. Gellin is he's a rich noble. He's a traditionalist. Gives a lot to the town. Got his money in textile and lumber, but secretly he's not. He's actually got connections to the Sea Princes, and smuggling. So those are the 2 traditionalists. And then we have the loyalists, and we have Elendar Fireborn. He's a loyalist. And I believe he is the town guard, right? Isn't he the captain of the town guard? I thought he was. I get confused. Who's the captain of the town guard? It's not him. And then you have Manistrad Copperlocks. She is a loyalist. And what? What do you want, kitty? I'm working. I'm trying to prep a game, kitty. I don't have time for this. This is not helpful. I don't know what you're doing, but it's not helpful. Ugh. Carson decided that was the time, huh? No, it's not the time. Let's see. Head of the Dwarven delegation and the miners. We can come back and fill some of this up. So then there's a secret. Spoilers. Oh, spoilers. There's going to be some spoilers here going on, everybody. So beware. God. This is Carson, everybody. Carson says hello. I don't know why Carson decided that now is the time to crawl down the front of my shirt. Don't do that. Get in your perch. Get and stay in your perch. There's a secret faction, the Scarlet Brotherhood. And there's Anders Solmar is not really a member of the Scarlet Brotherhood. He doesn't know. He is neutral. He took his mother's he is the neutral party, and your characters could have a connection to him, but he doesn't realize it. So secretly, we have. I put these down as characters. That was dumb. These are not characters. These are NPCs. So Anders' secret is that his servant, who has been Scarren White Wave Chaser, is his butler. And he is a real main villain in this game. And one thing is, one key is I don't introduce him at all. He does not meet the characters. You know, that he's a secret party. This is here's a one to grow on. If you don't want your he wants to know about the sinister cats of Salt Marsh. If you don't want your characters to immediately suspect a character of being evil, an NPC of being evil, or perhaps even calling them out, don't introduce them. Scarren doesn't meet the characters, right? Scarren maybe has other people and other servants. He's there doing stuff. And maybe they hear about him later, but not initially. I don't want him to even show up, right? But he's there doing stuff in the background. It kind of hurts it when you don't introduce a character. If you don't introduce a character and then later they find out who it is, they're like, oh, we never heard of this guy before. It's like, that's right, you know. But it kind of hurts the fun of the discovery of the mystery. The hard part is if you introduce them, they'll be like, I don't trust that butler at all, right? And they're like, wow, I was right. I never should have trusted that butler. Yeah, right. Navy DM, good plan. Hi, nice to meet you. I insight check him, you know. Now, even then you could say, like, you're not going to ever break this guy. Whatever insight you get. He's serving his master, right? But still, you know, you kind of want to hint at him. Anyway, he is the main villain in this, and his goal. So we're going to give him some front-like things. Whoops. He wants to destabilize the council. And he wants to bring in outside members or make sure that all of them are under the control of the Scarlet Brotherhood. That is his goal. He will do so a few different ways. He wants to steer the council wrong about the smugglers. He's not in league with the smugglers at the Haunted Mansion. But he wants to entrap members of the council. So his goal is to destabilize the council. That's what he's up to. And that might be going on while the characters... I don't know if this whole thing is even going to take place. Like, when I'm running the 9 adventures, like, maybe this stuff comes into play, and maybe not. But putting a villain in there is helpful. But obviously, he doesn't come up during the session 0. You know, I'm not going to bring him up. I just have him in the back of my mind, that there's this guy, he's really smart, he's an assassin, and he's... You know, his goal is to destabilize all of Salt Marsh. Like, that's his goal is to destabilize the council and put his own guys in charge. But he's very slow. He's actually the one that murdered Anders Solmar's mother, and then has been slowly feeding in Solmar, feeding Anders information that is slightly steering Anders astray. So this is a good example of like, well, obviously, and Solmar Anders doesn't even realize it's going on, right? Anders is saying this stuff, and they're like, is Anders bad? And it's like, no, he's not bad, right? He's a good guy. He's just getting information from the wrong source. He's getting information from Scarron. Would there be talk of Scarron and Saltmarsh? He seems to be a pretty sly villain. Reminds me of the Hand in the Daredevil show, where it's not clear where the Scarlet Brotherhood is coming from or disappearing to. Yeah. Right, so Anders is a good guy, but he's giving them wrong information, and the reason he's getting the wrong information is because Scarron is the one giving it to him, and Scarron is making sure that Anders doesn't say, like, by the way, I'm getting it from my buddy Scarron, right? So that way, all of the bad information is still getting to the characters, and the wrong information of things like, we're pretty sure those lizard folk are actually coming to attack Saltmarsh. We should attack those lizard folk right away. Could be one thing. That everything is wrong, right? I don't even know what kind of false information he could get about it. I don't know that he really knows that the party is the characters are a thing, and maybe he didn't get ahead of it. But Ned, so there is a character in the first adventure. Wow, I only got 10 minutes left. Let me get another couple characters done. We'll talk about some of the first adventure stuff next week. Ned, we'll talk about the problem with Ned in the next adventure and how we bring him in. So other NPCs, there's a couple I want to introduce. I want to introduce Welgar Brine-Handed. He runs the Priest of Procan. I already know that one of my characters is going to be a member of the Priest of Procan. And then there's a Druid. Farron Castellar. So we have a Druid. And I think I like this Ayuz. The Faithful Quartermaster of Ayuz. Captain Zendros sounds like a fun. Kind of a fun outsider to throw in there. So there's a bunch of NPCs. So we introduced these NPCs in our session 0 while the characters are getting introduced as well. I'm keeping my space open here so I can add the characters in when we fill that in. And then the other thing I do is, and this worked well, and the other one is I put out a map of Salt Marsh, right? They have a nice big map of the area. I think it was the first map I brought up here. Yeah, so here's our map of Salt Marsh itself. And I went through the list and I just said, I'm gonna describe all of the places of Salt Marsh briefly. Like, here's the city gates, here's the barracks and jail. I don't read all this stuff. I don't mention all this stuff. But I'll mark them, and then I'll say, anytime any one of the players says, I want to learn more about that, we stop and say, okay, let's talk about the Wicker Goat a little bit. But I'll say, Elendar's house is here, mining company is here, Keladek's tower is here. This might be an NPC worth keeping down. Not liked by the locals. Tall, sinister wizard. So we go through and say, I'll mention all of these different places, and they can kind of yell out whenever they want to hear more about a place, and that way they can sort of get familiar with the overall town. And there's a lot of places. What is it, 30? 30 places. Yeah, exactly 30 places, right? Oh, and I might try to drop some rumors. So, mentioning, and I think you can get through just a quick description of all 30 places, and then it'd probably take you a half hour, maybe a little longer. But again, session 0, this is what you're doing it for. So it is useful to kind of go through. Has everybody seen this? Yeah, everybody's seen that. So it's a good time to kind of go through and let people sort of describe what's here. And you learn about it too. You kind of remember things like the drop, is one of the places far up north, I think. Where is it? It's way up top. I guess it's one of the furthest places. Part 25, right? That, the leap it's called, right? And one of the characters I know is an Aarakocra. So it's like, oh, the leap is where I go and I leap off of it and fly around, and see stuff. So that can work, that can work really well. I have a feeling my flying character is going to be something to deal with. Branas Brahm says, just so I'm clear, when running through this session 0, are you usually just talking back and forth about things they know, or they in character? A little bit of both. You can be both in character and out of character. It's not rigid, right? This is a very loose session. So sometimes you will have them in character, and then sometimes they might step back out and then tweak their character. So it's a very flexible session, right? This is one where the world is really ethereal, and what you're doing is kind of putting things together. Janine says, I really dislike how the Salt Marsh map is oriented not oriented with north to top. Me too. And not only is this map not oriented that way. Did I skip the map? I think I skipped the map. Yeah, not only is north this way, but the regional map too. And I forgot to mention this. This is something I think is really useful, is that the regional map as well is a map worth printing out. And this is also printable as a blueprint. I didn't print it as a blueprint. I printed it as 11 by 17. But it is also, or I think the north is it the wrong? Did they switch it? Oh my God. So not only is north not oriented up, but they're flipped. Like, why? Why would you do that? Oh. Yeah, that didn't occur to me. That like that kind of cracks me up. But the Salt Marsh map is oriented north to the left, and the regional map is north to the right. Wow. Why not orient both north upwards? I don't know why you wouldn't do north upwards. Yeah, Vecna made the map. This is what happens when the Scarlet Brotherhood gets involved. Is probably what's his name, Scarron, got into the room and he just went and like, I'm gonna just change the orientation on this map, and then discord will spread throughout Salt Marsh, and I will rule with my disjointed maps. Pirates, man, pirates will screw you every time. So yeah, the overall, the whole purpose of a session 0 is to get everybody together, relax. This is, no strong start, no drive to like get them into combat as fast as you can. I did that last time, by the way, and they were like, "What happened to our session 0?" That in our session 0, they were all hanging out in the yawning portal, and then like a devil came crawling out of the portal and started beating the crap out of them. So I wasn't real kind with our last session 0, so I will be kinder with this one. It's got to be for formatting, or different cartographers, right? They went in different groups, but it's just a little, this is complicated projects. Things like this happen. It could also be that they took old maps from old versions, and maybe the old maps were done that way, or I don't know. Who could say? Maybe they got them after they had sent them and went, oh man, we got north on the wrong side. But it is, they're both portrait orientation. But you'd think right. They are oriented correctly, so there's no reason. I mean, they couldn't make north. You could actually just flip the map. You could actually take the player except it has words on it. You could flip the map. But then your map and your key would never match. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I hope. Yeah. So before I jump off, for those in chat, are there any other questions about session zeros? Do they make sense? Are there anything that makes you kind of scrunch your eyes and be like, I don't know how that works? You know, is there any confusing parts? I was hoping, and obviously this video went all over the place, but I was hoping that this would be a kind of a good look at how to do session zeros. Obviously, I wrote a chapter in Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master about doing session zeros. But I wanted to make sure that we kind of talked about it also in relation to Salt Marsh. I will write an article about running a session zero for Ghost of Salt Marsh, and it will of course link to the one page player guide and all of that. So any other questions, or does everybody feel like they've got a pretty good handle on things? I'm always curious. It's fun. I tell you, I am enjoying running Salt Marsh. Am I freezing? My video good? Everything cool? My own Twitch channel froze. But no, I guess I'm good. Yeah, so that's where we stand. I tell you, so now having spent some serious time reading this adventure and really digging into it, and having now run one session zero and the first session of Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, I really love this adventure. I love this book. I'm enjoying it a lot. I think there's always things to tweak. We'll talk about a couple of the things that I'm tweaking, but you already saw like the hook, right? Like the change in what brings the people to. How much review did you have to do on the underwater combat? I didn't even look at underwater combat yet. I haven't done anything with that because in the first adventure there isn't really any underwater combat. So I'll kind of worry about that. When I get closer to having done it. I didn't read a lot of the crunchy bits. I mostly read lore, and just try to get an idea of what's going on there. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a fun game. I love session zeros. They're just nice and relaxed. It's a great time to hang out with friends and kind of talk through the fiction and talk about people's characters. And gives a lot of room for people to kind of build their backgrounds in. I highly recommend it. I think it is a very valuable tool. And then of course, when we actually start in the next game, we go right into that, like, what's the strong start? How do we get them into the action? How do we make their characters? And then the world is solid. And I think this is a fantastic set of adventures to do it in. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. I hope you found it useful. And I always enjoy spending my Sunday mornings chatting with you guys about D&D. And it always helps me get my handle on my game. So thank you all for coming. And I will see you all next week when we'll talk about Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, Ghost of Saltmarsh Chapter 2. So have a great week and go play some D&D. Thank you very much.